We are going to end our brief discussion about the stomach with a few additional comments. You'll remember that the contents of the stomach are highly acidic, pH 1 or 2. You're literally producing hydrochloric acid and adding it to your gastric juices. And you will also remember that every single structure or organ that form the alimentary canal produce mucus. Within the stomach, you will produce additional amounts of highly viscous and thick mucus. And that mucus is going to be important in helping protect the walls of the stomach against that very acidic environment. The stomach also is going to have 3 layers of smooth muscle in its wall. And that's going to be important because you're going to have additional mixing and churning of material that can happen in the stomach because of that 3rd layer in order to mix the chyme that you're forming with the hydrochloric acid and the digestive enzymes that the stomach produces. And chyme is a fancy term, CHYME is the fancy term for the semi-liquid food mess or mass that is produced in the stomach. It kind of has the consistency of baby food. That will move out of the stomach in small drips into the small intestines through that pyloric sphincter, that little ring of smooth muscle between the stomach and the small intestine. And this shows you the location of the small intestine and the large intestine. The small intestine is actually called the small intestine because it has a smaller diameter than the large intestine. It's way longer than the large intestine, about 20 feet in length. 3 sections in order: the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. Spit it out. The duodenum is only about a foot or so long, foot to 13 inches long. That's where the chyme ends up once it leaves the stomach. A lot is going on in that little tiny duodenum, though, because the pancreas will increase the ability for the small intestine to digest because it is where you are going to produce and secrete the majority of digestive enzymes that are associated for or with digestion. So the pancreas produces the majority of digestive enzymes that you require for digestion. The pancreas will also produce bicarbonate ions. Why in the heck would the pancreas produce bicarbonate ions? Because the chyme that's leaving the stomach is really acidic, and those bicarbonate ions will neutralize that. So you don't have to worry about the walls of your small intestine being burned by that acidity. The gallbladder, right about the same location, the gallbladder is going to release bile, and bile's function is to emulsify fats, and that's basically a fancy way for saying breaking down fats. The liver actually produces the bile, but it's stored in the gallbladder. And actually, the production of bile is really the only digestive function of the liver. So the liver produces bile, which is stored in the gallbladder, and when you eat a fatty meal, the gallbladder will be triggered to release small amounts of bile into the duodenum so you can digest that fat, so you can emulsify that fat. So what happens in the duodenum? That chyme is mixed with bicarbonate ions and digestive enzymes. It says ions, but it should say digestive enzymes from the pancreas, and bile made in the liver, stored in the gallbladder and released from the gallbladder. The jejunum is where the majority of chemical digestion occurs. Let me repeat that so you've heard it twice. The jejunum is where the majority of chemical digestion occurs because you just added all these digestive enzymes to that chyme, right? So what happens? Well, you got these digestive enzymes and they break that down, break those macromolecules down into their building blocks so that those building blocks can get absorbed into intestinal cells and then move off either into the circulatory system or the lymphatic system. Absorption of those nutrients will also occur in the jejunum. And the ileum is there, that furthest part or the distal part of the small intestine is known as the ileum. And it's there to absorb the remainder of the nutrients that come out of the chyme. Once that chyme reaches the very end, the very distal part of the ileum, very few nutrients left. So that material, that chyme, will get to the ileocecal valve, which is that little sphincter between the small intestine and the large intestine, and then it'll move into the large intestine. This just shows you an image of what's going on there. The cecum is open. The cecum is the very first part of the large intestine. And you see that section that's labeled the vermiform process? That is actually the vermiform appendix, and we commonly know it as the appendix, which is, yes, that's the part that gets inflamed, which has to be removed if you have an appendectomy. Here are the parts of the large intestine in order. The cecum, the ascending colon, there's a little turn right by the liver, so that's why it's called hepatic flexure. Hepatic is associated with liver. Then there's a part that goes across the body, which is known as the transverse colon. There's going to be another turn at right near the spleen, so that area will be called the splenic flexure. And you'll have the descending colon, which morphs into the sigmoid colon, which will connect to the rectum. These are the functional large intestine. Major function: production, storage, elimination of fecal matter. Any additional water and electrolytes that are left in the material that leaves the small intestine will also be absorbed. So major function, another major function of the large intestine will be the absorption of water and electrolytes. Fascinating to me is this. We have a large population of bacteria, which are known as the normal flora of our large intestine. Those normal flora are going to be required for the synthesis of vitamin K, which you need for clotting, blood clotting, as well as vitamins B1, B2, and B12. And we will talk more about that gut biome and how it affects all sorts of things, including, get this, recent studies have shown that the health of your gut flora, your normal flora, can affect how motivated you are to exercise. Fascinating. So we've already talked about how one of the major functions of the large intestine is to absorb any remaining water and electrolytes into the cells of the walls of the large intestine. As that happens, that chyme is basically transformed into a semi-solid waste product, in other words, fecal matter. That fecal matter is going to be held in place once you reach the rectum through very strong muscular contractions of both the rectal and anal sphincters. Once that rectum is filled with feces, you are triggered to allow those muscles to relax, and then you will defecate. Fascinating. Remember that the alimentary canal, the GI tract, the digestive tract, is basically this muscular tube that starts at the mouth and ends at the anus. And there will be specializations along its entire length, which allow you to take nutrients in the form of food and break them down into smaller and smaller and smaller components until you can absorb them. So those nutrients can be used to generate energy and repair, maintain, and grow tissues.